I will call Michael Wheeler to move the motion, and I will then call the Minister to respond. I remind other members that they may only make a speech with prior permission from the member in charge of the debate and the Minister. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention in a 30-minute debate. Order, order. Michael Wheeler to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered non-compliance animal testing incidents in laboratories. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Mr Weston. The uncomfortable backdrop of today's debate is that animal experimentation results in legally sanctioned animal suffering. That is the fact that we must keep at the front of our minds, especially as a country that prides itself on being a nation of animal lovers. At the 2024 election, I was proud to stand on a manifesto commitment to work towards phasing out animal testing. The stark reality, however, is that more than 5 million animals have been approved for use in experiments over the coming years. Behind that large headline figure lie individual cases that are often deeply distressing, such as primates being subjected to invasive brain surgery. With that said, the focus of today's debate is not on the legality of those licences, contentious though they might be. It is on what happens when even the limited protections that do exist in law are not upheld. In the current system, legally sanctioned animal suffering is compounded by systemic regulatory failure. On the 12th of December 2025, the Home Office's Animals in Science Regulation Unit, ASRU, published its 2024 annual report. The report provides a window into the shocking suffering that occurs when our animal testing safeguards fail.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will, of course.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Reports have shown animals accidentally crushed in a compactor, a primate who was trapped in their cage which was unnoticed and they died, animals falling out of a vehicle and being lost, and many dying of thirst or hunger or drowning in flooded cages. Does my honourable friend agree with me that these cases of non-compliance are unacceptable, that more must be done to avoid this happening in future, and people who allow this to happen must face the consequences?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and of course I agree. And it is ASRU that is tasked with licensing animal experiences and, importantly, ensuring compliance with the Animals Scientific Procedures Act 1986. The reason we have that act is to protect animals and to require the use of non-animal alternatives wherever scientifically possible. Yet the report shows far too many incidents in which animals were harmed, injured or killed because licence conditions were breached or basic standards were not met. These are not minor administrative errors. We are talking about animals, as my honourable friend said, drowning, starving to death and being left to die without veterinary care or being accidentally disposed of as waste. In 2024 alone, there were 146 recorded cases of non-compliance in British laboratories. While that figure represents a modest but welcome decrease from the previous year, the incidents still involve more than 22,000 animals. An analysis from Animal Free Research UK suggests that at least 542 animals either died or were euthanised as a direct result of those failures.
Would the honourable member give way?
I will, of course.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. And I've also worked alongside Animal Free Research on these issues, including to introduce a private member's bill representing their version of Herbie's law. As the member says, incidents of non-compliance in 2024 involved 22,204 animals. Does the member agree with me that the government's recent replacing animals in science strategy sets out a pathway for the elimination in certain areas, but that in reality we should also still be enforcing compliance across the sector and also, where possible, as with Herbie's law, moving further than we are at the moment?
Of course, it will surprise my honourable friend not at all that I do agree. I will come to the wider context and wider solutions, but at this point in time, whilst we can look to improve the situation, we must absolutely look to make sure that current regulations are enforced as we speak and not let slide. Because hundreds of animals whose suffering breached the current legal framework, and that suffering should have been prevented. Some of the most disturbing incidents involve something as basic as access to food and water. In 2024, there were 9 separate cases in which animals were not provided adequate food or hydration, and 24 animals died as a result of that. In another case, a mother was removed from her cage and killed, leaving 7 unweaned pups to starve to death. The report catalogues a litany of serious failures. Animals were reused in second experiments without proper authorization. Others were kept alive past what most would consider a humane endpoint, left to suffer as tumours grew too large or body weight fell dangerously low. In one case, misidentification of sex led to regulated procedures being performed on 7 pregnant mice. These failures affect a wide range of animals. Primates suffered injuries from faulty equipment, had tails trapped in caged doors, or were left without food overnight. A Freedom of Information request revealed that in one case, an incident deemed by ASRU to be a minor breach involved a dog being kept alive despite having already suffered severe swelling of the parotid salivary glands as a result of the procedures it had been through before eventually being euthanized. Given the gravity of these incidents, we should expect robust enforcement. Instead, we see a regulatory regime that is alarmingly weak. In 3/4 of non-compliance cases, the only response was inspector advice.
First of all, can I commend Donald Germany? He's bringing forward some very harrowing stories, and they certainly are hard to accept. Mr. Chairman, non-compliance with animal welfare laws on farms in Northern Ireland detected over 21% of inspected cases, and it's clear that the welfare inspection is the key to making them acknowledge the regulations and to ensure that they do what they should do. Does the honourable member therefore agree that non-compliance is best detected through inspection, and more focus must be on inspection rates to ensure issues can be dealt with?
I thank the honourable member for strength of that intervention, and of course I do agree, and I have some information that will illustrate the point and the importance of inspections. In 2024, just 68 establishments were audited across Great Britain. Only 10 of those inspections were unannounced, which represents just 15% of inspections, which is down from 63% of inspections in 2018. The issue is further exacerbated by some elements of those audits being carried out remotely. Nearly 70% of non-compliance incidents were actually self-reported, which raises a troubling question about how much more is going undetected in the absence of regular independent spot checks. Whilst ASRU's current regime of regulatory reform does include increasing the number of inspectors to 22 full-time equivalents by March, up from 14.5, incremental tweaks to oversight will not solve the underlying problem. In 2024 alone, 2.64 million scientific procedures were carried out on animals. That scale of activity cannot be meaningfully overseen by marginal staffing increases. The wider issue is that we continue to allow legally sanctioned animal suffering. For instance, some licences permit deliberate deprivation. Primates' entire daily food intake can be restricted so that it can be used as a reward for correct task performance during sessions lasting up to 6 hours. Rats, meanwhile, can go without water for up to 22 hours a day over a week to encourage them to consume liquids containing potentially aversive substances. Thousands of procedures still rely on controversial tests such as LD50 toxicity testing and the forced swim test, an outdated model that the government acknowledges has limited scientific value. Licence summaries reveal that the severity of authorised suffering, with thousands of animals undergoing painful procedures without analgesia, because pain relief might interfere with the results. Equally concerning is the failure to uphold the core legal principle at the heart of the Animal Scientific Procedures Act. Section 2A is clear. Scientifically satisfactory non-animal methods must be used wherever possible. Yet an expert report commissioned by the National Centre for the Replacement, Refinement and Reductions of Animals in Research identified a system-wide failure to replace animals where alternatives already exist. Home Office summaries show that licences have been granted even when non-animal methods are clearly available. In one example, animals are being used as an intermediary step in heart disease research, despite well-known anatomical differences that limit the relevance of that research to humans. It is time for us to find another way. Over 92% of drugs that succeed in animal tests do not end up being used by patients. This is primarily due to poor efficacy and safety issues that were not predicted by animal testing. We are now at the point where human-specific technologies using human cells, tissues, artificial intelligence and advanced modelling offer faster, safer and more relevant results. Pioneering work projects have been taking place for decades, leading to breakthroughs like mini-hearts that accurately model human cardiac disease without harming animals. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, and I would just like to firstly say, pay tribute to my honourable friend. He is making a powerful case this morning, very, very traumatic as well. And on the subject of human specifics, does he agree with me that if we are to really fulfil our manifesto commitment from 2024 and enable a transition to a more modern human-specific technology, then we should introduce Herbie's Law without delay?
I think it will come as no surprise to my honourable friend that I do agree with him, and I will be making that call very specifically. But in terms of where we are in the development of those alternatives, we are in a good place, and I therefore welcome the publication of the government's Replacing Animals in Science strategy in November. Yes.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I should have said this earlier, but I'm chair of the APPG for phasing out animal experiments in medical research. Does my honourable friend agree with me that the evidence is there and that we can move much quicker towards getting to a place where animals are no longer needed in research?
I thank my honourable friend for another valued intervention, and I do agree with her. The government's strategy contained a range of positive measures, such as increasing funding for human-specific technologies. But we can move faster and more. We have an opportunity for growth within that strategy that supports cutting-edge, world-leading new technologies that are developed right here in the UK. And I would, as I have said, urge the government to go further. I would urge the government to commit to the replacement of all animals in medical research in the UK by 2035. As colleagues and friends have referenced, this is known as Herbie's Law, after Herbie, a beagle bred for the laboratory but saved before he was used. Herbie's Law would provide a practical, collaborative pathway to deliver the government's manifesto commitment to phase out animal testing. It sets a clear ambition to replace animal experiments in medical research over the next decade. It establishes expert oversight and supports scientists through the transition. It has been carefully drafted by legal experts, is backed by more than 155 of our colleagues here in Parliament, and enjoys strong public support. I will conclude by saying that the non-compliance incidents detailed in the ASRI report and the fact that the non-compliance incidents are regularly causing serious animal suffering in this country should shock us. It should prompt reflection and it should prompt action. Ultimately, the only way to eliminate these incidents completely is to end animal testing once and for all. We need a research and innovation system that is scientifically excellent, ethically robust and animal-free. I urge the government to strengthen enforcement, ensure that the law is upheld in practice and to deliver a clear timeframe roadmap to phasing out animal testing. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered non-compliance animal testing incidents in laboratories. Minister.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Weston, and thank you to my honourable friend, the member for Worsley and Eccles, who has, I think, given us a very powerful depiction of what happens when things go wrong and the importance of making sure the government ensures an oversight and a licensing regime to make sure things do not go wrong. I think there are a number of different areas of policy that my honourable friend has touched on that I should respond to. I think the starting point is from the stories that he has given us today of where things have gone wrong and the push for Herbie's law and the going further and faster on the removal of animals in scientific testing. I think we can all probably agree across this House that we want to phase out the use of animals in science, and the strategy that honourable colleagues have introduced in other departments in government to replace animals in science I think shows the direction of travel now. I think probably there are calls that we should go further and faster, and of course we will listen and work with colleagues on doing just that. Yes.
I thank the Minister for giving way. In relation to the strategy, it is of course hugely welcome, but there are no timelines associated with much of the strategy. And for the strategy to work effectively and to get us to where we need to be, I think we have to have timelines. Is there any indication of when timelines are likely to be made clear to us?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I'll certainly take that question back to my colleagues who are implementing the strategy. And I've heard before from other colleagues the call for a faster timeline. Obviously, in terms of the science and the development of it, some of the things that my honourable friend mentioned in terms of the transformational technology that we have here to be able to develop this and the opportunities that come from that in terms of growth. There are some things to which we don't know the answer because the science is not yet finished, but I hear the point in terms of wanting to push for change as soon as possible. I would just say that the purpose of having the strategy is to phase out animal testing. That is this government's ambition, and that is this government's intention, and the human relevant alternatives that we want to replace it with obviously have to continue to protect public health and product safety, and we have to be sure that replacements are able to do that. We know, uncomfortable though it is, that the use of animals in science has enabled us to develop medicines that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do, and to replace that we need to make sure that what comes afterwards is robust. But having a sort of a revolution in the research and the innovation that we have here in this country, building on that, using our expertise to make sure we go as fast as possible is everybody's ambition. But I hear the call for timelines, and I will talk to my colleagues about how we try to do that. Obviously, the strategy itself has a kind of tiered approach of identifying which animal test can be replaced soonest and what are the kind of easier ones to get done first, and that's the approach in the strategy, and the sort of timescale for that longer term roadmap I hear very much the call for. Turning to the use of animals now within the systems that we have. Of course, there's great public interest in making sure that we treat animals as they should be treated when they are used in research. And my honourable friend talked a lot about the work of the regulator and how we have a robust approach to regulation. Lord Hanson in the Home Office oversees the regulator and signed off last year a package of reform to the regulator, which my honourable friend touched on, I think was slightly more dismissive of than perhaps we would be, but heard what he said. But there has been an increase in the number of people who are able to go out and ensure oversight and a new focus through the reform programme. That has just begun, and I think we need to give it a bit of time to see whether it's working more effectively. But I hear very loud and clear the calls from my honourable friend to make sure it's being as robust as it can. It might be useful, if we've got time, yes we have, to just look at the way that the regulator works currently, and then we can work together going forward. And I don't know if my honourable friend's met with the regulator, whether it might be worth us convening something, perhaps with some other interested MPs, to have a conversation about what the reforms are and where we think that is going to improve. So it's set up to prevent compliance breaches, obviously, and the regulator investigates. If non-compliance is confirmed, the regulator does have a broad range of sanctions available, and I think one of the conversations is are they using all those sanctions in the way that they could? They range in severity, and my honourable friend sort of mentioned those at the lower end. There are powers that the regulator has to act that are more extensive, but I think a conversation with the regulator about how we are balancing the self-referral, which often comes, and which is, you know, we have very good and honourable people who are doing research and using the system as it should be, but I also hear the slight question about self-referral and whether we're actually in the places that we need to be as much as we should. There is a balance in terms of the regulatory approach and how punitive approaches can be. We want the sector to be open, we want it to be transparent, so we have to get that balance right, and I'm sure my honourable friend would sort of understand that. And where we are disproportionate, if that is a risk, then of course work gets offshored and goes elsewhere where the systems are not anywhere near as powerful as they are in this country. So we need to get proportionality within that approach to non-compliance, I would say. We need to, I think, also understand that self-reporting isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing. We want to have a culture of care, and one that's respectful of animals. And most incidents, as we've said, of non-compliance are self-reported. And the decisions that are taken after that are then proportionate. Where there are breaches that are more significant, as I said, the sanctions are there, and I think we could have a conversation with the regulator about when those sanctions are imposed and when they are not. I think I would conclude by saying thank you again to honourable colleagues for raising this issue. We have a very strict licensing regime, which I am partly responsible for, both for the 100-odd companies that are able to test on animals, the 13,000 individuals who have a licence to use animals in testing, and that is a very rigorous regime. We have a regulator who is going through reform and has had its functions beefed up over the last year, and we have an ambition as a government to end the use of animals in science, but I will always, as a minister, give a commitment to push for more, and I will always listen to my right honourable colleagues for advice. And I think a good takeaway from this session would be for perhaps us to understand a bit more where the regulator's coming from, what that balance is in terms of proportionality, and how we can all move forward, and also hearing the calls for a bit more timeliness in terms of when we're going to end the use of animals in testing and how we can work with colleagues across government to deliver that. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered non-compliance animal testing incidents in laboratories. As many as are of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is now suspended until 2:30 p.m.